This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And this is James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com, and we welcome you to the 93rd episode of New World Next Week, which of course you can find at newworldnextweek.com. And we also like to thank ParadigmShift.tv, who helped spread the word about this show and get it shown on Sky Satellite Channel 201. And all the other folks out there on your blog or whatever kind of social network site to help spread the word about newworldnextweek.com. We appreciate it. This episode for December 1st, as we now enter the last month in what has been an unbelievable year in the rate and the velocity and the veracity of all the news going on. It makes one's head spin. But we'll begin this episode with a press release from the Dow Jones posted on the Wall Street Journal. U.S. stocks surged. Dow Jones Industrial Average notches biggest gain since March 2009. 3 substantial economic developments announced in quick succession Wednesday, November 30th, included efforts from several central banks to shore up the global financial system, prompted the Dow Jones Industrial Average to notch its largest gain since March 2009. Central banks around the globe announced a coordinated plan to make dollar funding cheaper for European banks. The announcement came after China indicated it would loosen monetary policy by lowering the reserve requirement ratio for banks, and a report on the labor market showed private business hiring rose by 206,000 in November, the largest monthly gain this year. And if we jump down a little bit, a telling moment, while the joint central bank effort didn't address the fundamental problems associated with European government debt, it underscored a sense of urgency to address the broad issues ailing the global financial system, which is, of course, falling apart, all by design. James?
Woohoo! Yay! The Dow's up! Yay! We can all retire. We're everything's solved. All of our economic problems are over. Oh, wait. Are you saying that the Dow is actually just a meaningless figure that's really actually only pumped up by the devaluation of the currency itself? All right. Then back to the drawing board, I guess.
That's exactly it, and that has been trumpeted, it's been on the front of, all the news pages here in the States, that it's, woohoo, it's a rally, and I think it also serves to kind of push and prod folks as we head into December, and we've already had the unbelievable, ridiculousness of Black Friday, all those things as we head into Christmas. So you can't help but wonder, the psychological effect of like, oh, it's going to be okay. It's, call it morning in America like Reagan or whatever hope dawn sort of terminology the Obama side uses. But yeah, it's unbelievable. And it connects to all the things that I think we've talked about in all these past episodes on New World Next Week, that essentially it's all a sham. It's money printed out of thin air, loaned to people at interest, and they buy up the real and sell us the fake and give us the debt and all of those notes. James, let me add on an extra part to this. And one of the more eye-rolling stories I've seen lately, 3 asset managers win $254 million Powerball lottery from, appropriately enough, the Deal Book from the New York Times. The lottery's full of rags to riches tales. Now the 1% has its own feel-good story. 3 executives at Bell Point Asset Management, an investment firm in Greenwich, Connecticut, have won $254.2 million in a Powerball game, the largest jackpot in the state's history, which, of course, is one of the most wealthy states in the nation. Interestingly, they had a brief scare after a local news station mistakenly ran the winning numbers with a changed digit. Later, the station corrected the error, and they began planning to collect their millions. The trio formed the Putnam Avenue Family Trust to handle the winnings and decided to take a lump payment of $151.7 million rather than receive the prize in installments. James, any words on that?
All I want to say is it's almost times like that you're almost happy that the dollar is devaluing so much, because at least it's devaluing their winnings. But well, what can you say? I mean, at least if the dollar devalues and goes into full Weimar hyperinflation and the Dow Jones goes up 1,000% overnight or whatever, at least people aren't going to be buying it anymore. I mean, people are waking up to the scam. So they can trumpet it all they want, but I think we know better.
Let's look abroad for our second story from CNN International. Cyberwar explodes in Syria. A familiar digital chime rang on the computer someone was calling via Skype from Syria. It was a law student and opposition activist from the city of Homs who uses the pseudonym Musab al-Husseini to protect himself from arrest. He had fresh reports that security forces were shooting guns wildly in the neighborhood Baba Amir. Husseini was calling via Psiphon, that's P-S-I-P-H-O-N, an online encryption system he had just installed that morning. He said it protected him from detection by the Syrian security forces. Psiphon is a surveillance-busting network system designed by a Canadian company with funding from the U.S. State Department. The company's CEO told CNN the software had been aggressively introduced to Syria just 3 weeks ago. Since then, thousands of people have begun using it. What we're doing is not much different from what the airwaves provided during the Cold War to provide those citizens living behind the Iron Curtain with an ability to get information which otherwise they were not getting from their state, said Rafal Rosinski, CEO of 2 companies involved in developing Psiphon. It is interesting to note that perhaps the name Psiphon, one, its regular name of just siphoning information, and what kind of information could that be? And the word itself also kind of looks like psyop or psychological operation. But according to that, as you know, bastion of truthiness, Wikipedia, that its past and present clients and supporters include the European Union, Broadcast Board of Governors in the U.S., the aforementioned United States State Department, and the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC. So, James, basically a State Department-funded piece of software being put out to folks in this ongoing Arab Spring.
Ooh, so surprising there, isn't it? Yeah, and pretty much what we would expect, isn't it? And of course, for anyone who's been keeping their eye on this for the last few years and have been reading Evgeny Morozov and the other people who have been, creating this meme of the Twitter revolution and all of this kind of stuff, to find, shady companies with ties to the upper branches of the elite institutions providing this wonderful software to Syrians so that they can communicate and organize their resistance is not particularly surprising, because of course this entire these destabilization efforts and all of these Twitter revolutions and these Skype connections and all of this is aimed at America's political enemies, not at their friends. So you'll never see this happening in Saudi Arabia or any other equally tyrannical regime where people are equally oppressed by the elite parasites sucking the blood off of the population. It'll never happen there. It only happens in places where the Americans have interest in making sure that the regime goes down. So it's a sad state of affairs. And you'll notice, for example, no one cares about Zimbabwe or other places where there's all sorts of corruption and things. It's never about places like that and that are in the middle of nowhere because they don't have the resources. It's always in geostrategic or resource-rich places. So I think we all know what the agenda is behind these types of things, and I think we all know where this is heading, unfortunately.
If I didn't already, I do want to thank I have a listener and a great source of news and tips from Greece. So I want to thank him for sending me this story about Psiphon. And James, I think in a way, and I kind of just thought about this, is maybe a great background for folks would be, I think your last couple of episodes of the podcast have been excellent, going over Danny Casolaro and the Octopus and Inslaw and the software. And you can talk, and you've done a lot of great work on Ptech. So maybe we'll add in the show notes to go look at things like Ptech and the Inslaw Octopus case to kind of show the story of software with backdoors and all of those types of things. Any last word before our third and final story this week?
I think that pretty much covers it, but yeah, it's a good idea to look into software that have intelligence agencies backdoors, and that reminds me of the Cryptagon story recently about Apple's iTunes update, which had this backdoor installed that the British intelligence was using to spy on their own citizens and things like that. People have to look that one up. That's an interesting little story, but there you go. It's very common, isn't it?
And that's, I think, the weird line that I think you and I and all the millions of other folks out there, we kind of have to ride, because you and I are talking through Skype right now, which has been gobbled up by Microsoft, which we're using these things while we can to try and spread the information that is open and available. Our third and final story this week, James, we shift to your own FukushimaUpdate.com, where we put the con in DeCONtamination. There are two different videos, which we will give you the links and you can check out for yourselves, where they're power washing trees and calling it DeCONtamination. So there's one video showing the power washing of trees which is just washing the poison essentially down into the soil and into the roots. There's another video where they've at least put a tarp up, which I'm sure fixes everything. The NHK has a November 28th clip that shows exactly the same decon method, but without any tarp to at least shield the soil from radioactive materials being sprayed down. This advanced technology, DeCONtamination, will be used by 60 fruit orchards in 3 municipalities in Fukushima starting in the middle of this December. And the fruit farmers themselves will get to do the decon job. Which, James, that kind of brings the question to me. It seems like the farmers themselves would look at this and go, hey, what? Why are we doing this? What's the point of power washing the radioactive materials off the trees and into the ground? James.
It boggles the mind, doesn't it? I mean, what is the point of this? I mean, it's clearly just for show, and the tarp, I imagine, is also just for show in that one video. Obviously, that's a demonstration that they're doing for the cameras, but the actual decontamination work, for anyone who has been keeping an eye on Fukushima Update on a daily basis, they'll know all of the background to this and the fact that earlier this month, for example, or last month actually, by the time you watch this, they were decontaminating houses in Fukushima Prefecture, and they decontaminated 26 of them, and I think only 4 of them actually got to the level of radiation they were hoping to get to, and the person was basically saying, yeah, it's a lot harder to decontaminate these houses than it looks, and basically, yeah, all it amounts to is a big power washing kind of, hey, look what we're doing kind of operation, but really it is psychological. There's not much they can do, and there's even been Japanese government officials and university professors and others come out before and said there's no way to possibly decontaminate the soil itself. I mean, you can't move the entire top layer of soil of the entire prefecture and move it to another part, and even if you did move it somewhere, it would just radiate that part of the country. So I mean, there is a significant problem here that's not going to go away with any amount of magic power washing, and again, it's just a photo op.
And a psychological power washing that, again, there's always seems to be a through line that I think connect the stories, and that's by no accident that we try and put together stories that go around the world and look at a number of different issues, but show you the through line and the subtext and what makes it so important. James, as we wrap up this 93rd episode of NewWorldNextWeek.com, again, I just want to thank you for doing this. As I noted, we're now into our 2nd year, and I appreciate it so much. I have my own episode 241 of the Media Monarchy live podcast coming up this week. And you also have work coming up as well very soon on CorbettReport.com.
That's right. In fact, I've got in my hot little hands right here, I've got the very first test pressing of my brand new DVD out that will be shipping out starting this weekend. It's available for purchase now on CorbettReport.com. It's a data DVD. It should play in any regular computer, and it's an archive of every single podcast episode, every interview, every article, every video on CorbettReport.com from its founding in mid-2007 until the end of 2008. So literally hundreds of hours of media all on one DVD. So I hope people will check that out at CorbettReport.com/support.
That's such a fantastic idea, and that's something...
Sorry, I forgot to mention, also, I've got a new e-newsletter that for any subscriber to the Corbett Report, anyone who's paying 100 Japanese yen a month donation, there's going to be a new e-newsletter. It's got news and analysis, recommended reading and viewing. It's got subscriber-only video and discounts on Corbett Report DVDs. So I hope people will check that out as well, starting today. It's going to be coming out later today.
All right, man. Fantastic. So much amazing work. And like I said, I'm so, stoked to be able to do all these things with you and be connected with you in this, what we've called the new Gutenberg revolution, my friend. So thanks so much.
Thank you.